When you walk through Central Park today, it feels eternal, as if it's always been here. The green lawns, the winding trails, the skyline framed by trees. It's hard to imagine Manhattan without it. But before the park existed, this land was home to something else entirely, a thriving community called Seneca Village, where Black and immigrant families lived, worshipped, and built futures for themselves long before the first blade of park grass was ever planted. Seneca Village was founded in 1825, decades before anyone broke ground on Central Park. At the time, the area was rural and rugged, far north of the city's bustle. A man named John Whitehead owned a large section of land between roughly today's West 82nd and West 89th Streets and decided to subdivide and sell it. His buyers included free Black New Yorkers, people who were carving out independence in a city where racial discrimination was still widespread. One of the first was Andrew Williams, a 25-year-old shoeshiner who purchased 3 lots for $125. Another was Epiphany Davis, a store clerk and local leader, and the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, one of the most prominent Black churches in New York, also bought several lots to build a church and cemetery. These weren't just buyers, they were founders of a self-made community. By the mid-1850s, Seneca Village had grown to between 225 and 260 residents, about 2/3 of them African American, the rest mostly Irish and German immigrants. They built 3 churches, a school, and at least 2 burial grounds. Houses were modest but sturdy, wood frame homes with gardens, fences, and wells. Residents kept livestock, grew vegetables, and built a close-knit life on the city's outskirts. Seneca Village mattered deeply because land ownership meant more than stability. It meant political rights. In 19th century New York, Black men could only vote if they owned property worth at least $250. So these residents weren't just building homes. They were building citizenship, dignity, and voice in a society that rarely allowed it. But as Manhattan expanded northward, the city's wealthy and political elite were dreaming of something new, a grand public park that would elevate New York's image to rival London and Paris. Writers and reformers promoted the idea of a central park, calling it a democratic gift for all citizens. But the proposed parkland happened to include the very ground Seneca Village stood on. In 1853, the state legislature approved the creation of Central Park and gave the city the power to seize more than 700 acres through eminent domain, a legal process that allowed the government to take private land for public use in exchange for fair compensation. City officials portrayed Seneca Village as a shanty town, full of squatters and vagrants, though tax records prove that most residents owned their property legally and paid taxes. The truth was that the city wanted the land, and the people living there stood in the way of progress as it was defined by the powerful. Compensation followed, but it was uneven and often contested. Some families received settlements. For example, Andrew Williams was paid about $2,335, far less than he'd requested. Others received little or nothing. Many residents argued their land had been undervalued, but fighting the city was nearly impossible. Evictions began in the mid-1850s, and by 1857, the community was gone. Houses were torn down, churches were dismantled, cemeteries were partially dug up, though later discoveries suggest not all burials were properly relocated. Families were forced to scatter. Some likely moved north to what would become Harlem. Others faded into records too sparse to trace. By 1858, the city broke ground on Central Park. The rocky, rural terrain was reshaped into rolling hills, open meadows, ponds, and promenades, a carefully designed version of nature by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. It was hailed as a masterpiece of civic vision, but beneath that beauty lay the erased foundations of homes, churches, and family plots, the remains of Seneca Village. For over a century, almost no one spoke of it. Textbooks didn't mention it, maps omitted it. The park's official history focused on design, architecture, and public recreation, not displacement. It wasn't until the late 20th century that researchers began uncovering the truth. Historians and archaeologists started digging through archives, property deeds, and the soil itself. In 2011, excavations led by the Seneca Village Project and the Central Park Conservancy uncovered the foundations of homes, stone walls, household items, and personal artifacts, ceramics, tools, buttons, shoes. These discoveries confirmed what the old documents hinted at. Seneca Village was not a slum. It was a stable, self-sustaining community. Today, the city officially recognizes that. In 2001, the Central Park Conservancy installed a plaque acknowledging Seneca Village's existence. And in 2019, a larger interpretive exhibit was added, multiple signs that trace the layout of the original village across a walking route. They help visitors visualize what once stood here: homes, gardens, schools, and churches, all built by families who believed in the promise of ownership. Still, the story of Seneca Village is about more than just one lost neighborhood. It's about the ongoing tension between progress and displacement, a pattern that repeats across New York's history. Decades after Seneca Village was cleared, other Black and immigrant neighborhoods would meet similar fates. San Juan Hill, home to thousands of African American and Puerto Rican residents, was demolished to make room for Lincoln Center in the 1950s. In the Bronx, highways cut through established communities. Time and again, urban renewal came at the cost of homes that didn't fit the city's new image. Yet Seneca Village's story isn't only one of loss, it's also a testament to resilience, proof that free Black New Yorkers built something enduring, even when the city erased it from sight. Their presence reshaped the narrative of who built New York and who belonged here. Central Park remains one of the world's great public spaces. That's undeniable. It's a gift to millions, a green escape in a concrete city. But acknowledging its history doesn't take away its beauty. It adds depth to it, because knowing what came before, the families, the gardens, the community, reminds us that progress isn't just about what we build. It's also about what we choose to remember. Today, when you walk through the park's quiet west side near 85th Street, stop for a moment. Look at the open lawns, the gentle hills. Beneath that soil once stood homes with children's laughter, church bells ringing, and gardens tended by people who dreamed of a better future. Their stories nearly vanished, but not completely. Seneca Village lives on, not as a ruin, but as a reminder, because Central Park isn't just a park. It's also a lesson that every great city is built on stories, and sometimes on silence.